All right. I think it's time for us to start. Just to be sure, can everybody hear me all right? Awesome. Thanks, Ethan. All right, so I'll get right into it. Today's talk is going to be pretty much for people that are trying to, break into the tech industry. We're going to try to walk through a template that I have designed, which is shared in the links here. We're going to try to walk through that template, to sort of get a concept where you have some wide understanding, greater knowledge about, the industry and various aspects of the industry, so that it's easier for you to make a decision based off what you know and not based off, what people tell you about the industry. So I'll get right into it. First, about me. So I'm a software engineer. I've been a software engineer for almost 6 years now. Currently, I freelance with Codementor, and I pretty much host events. This it happens to be my first event on Codementor, so I'm hoping I get to give some more after today. So a bit on the outline here. So we'll pretty much go through the thought process. Things you need to consider before you start anything. We'll go through certain terms that you need to be familiar with to make it easier for you to understand what people are talking about, to make it easier for you to understand where you're headed or what to expect as you move in. Then we'll talk a bit more about some deeper terminologies that are used in the industry, and then we'll talk a bit about various job roles that are in the industry. People are familiar with the very common ones are web developers, front end, back end developers, but we also have tech adjacent roles like sales engineer and stuff like that. So we'll go a little bit into that to get an understanding of how these various roles come in play, and then we'll get to how you should go ahead to make your decision. All right. So first, going into the thought process. Now we need to first know that the main goal of the talk is pretty much to get everyone to understand uh, the various roles in the industry, and we also need to understand that when we're talking about breaking into tech in this context, we're not talking about people that work for tech industries or work in tech companies, say as marketing managers or the non-tech people. We're talking specifically about the technical roles in the industry. So we're talking about the engineers, we're talking about the developers, we're talking about the designers, we're talking about the program managers and the like. So we're focusing on those kinds of people, not necessarily the business side of things or the technical side of things. And we're trying to, so again, one of the goals of this talk is to expose people to the broad list of fields in the industry. Because I think most people are really familiar with the fact that we have software engineers, but there are various other roles that exist out there. So we need to know that these roles exist, and it's very possible that coming from a non-technical background, there are other technical roles that you could easily, move into. For instance, someone coming from a sales background could easily move into a sales engineering role and stuff like that. Yeah. All right. So now, focusing here a bit, so based on the thought process, should be thinking, or when you're thinking about, or when you're trying to make the decision, you need to, be considering, thinking about why exactly you're trying to get into the industry, because people have their various reasons. Some people are in it to solve problems, some people are in it because it excites them, some people are in it for very many reasons. You need to, as a person, understand exactly why you want to get into the industry, because it helps you to make the decision moving forward. You really need to know the reason why you're getting into it, because then it helps you to narrow down where you would like to, move your career towards. Okay, so now in terms of the industry terms, there are a couple that I'd just like to talk about. And again, the document I have, sort of has these and a bit more. And the goal is the idea behind that document is for everyone interested in going through this path to uh, have a copy of that document, on your own, go through some of these terms and try to define them, understand them, let it marinate in you so you sort of get exactly what you are looking for. So in terms of the industry terms, so I have a couple here, like I said. So we'll start with the first one. So when we have the mocks, so pretty much this is referred to as massive open online courses. So I think most of us should be familiar with Coursera, Udemy, Udacity, and these are usually just platforms where you can, get on there and get various courses to learn from. And having people here today, I'll take it that most of us have already, made use of these different platforms. So these are things that when you want to start, when you want to get into the industry, you need to be familiar with these kinds of platforms because they help you to, learn from various experts, because I mean, you could be talking to someone that is an expert in a certain field, but you're interested in another field. It's easier for you to jump on these platforms and get a course that corresponds with what you're interested in and helps you to learn moving there. Then now I'm going to go through some of these terms to sort of explain what they mean, just to get people that have no knowledge at all about some of them to get an understanding of them or what they mean. So the next one is coding bootcamps. So I'm sure we also, some of us already know about coding bootcamps. So pretty much what coding bootcamps try to do is they try to offer a fast tracked way for you to gain knowledge and skills required to excel in whatever field you're moving into. And we have lots of them out there. Some of them are free, some of them aren't. There are a couple that I know about personally, that I know people that have attended them are really doing really well in the industry now. I think there's Thinkful, there's General Assembly, there's Flat Iron, and there's my personal favorite, Bloom Tech. I attended Lambda School, a boot camp a while back. So that, I mean, I can attest to the fact that they are really good for that. But there are a couple others, a lot more. Some of these are paid for, some of these aren't. So you should, based off what you're able to do, you could decide to go for the ones you pay for. You could decide to go for the free one. So it's all dependent on what you like to do. Then before I let everyone there. Yeah, all right. All right, awesome. Okay, so before I get to the software engineering term, I'd like to extend a little bit more what code is because I think people tend to hear the word code and not really know what it means. So it's as simple as when we're talking about code, we're pretty much referring to a series of written instructions for the computer to perform. So it's as basic as that. So when you hear someone in the industry talking about code, the person is pretty much referring to different instructions written for the computer to perform. Okay, now software engineering is somewhat a very popular field in the industry. That's something that lots of people are really familiar with. But you need to understand that who a software engineer is. A software engineer pretty much is one that would be able to go through the whole software development life cycle. So that's someone that pretty much designs, develops, tests, maintains, and pretty much evaluates software systems. When we're talking about web development, talking about web design, talking about now, I think people tend to sort of mix it up when you're talking about web design, when you're talking about web development. Tend to mix it up as well when you're talking about web applications and websites. These terms are pretty much different, sort of mean different things. So we're talking about web development, we're pretty much talking about creating and building websites and building web applications. When we're talking about web design, the focus for web design is usually on websites only, and websites are pretty much uh, different how do I put this now? So websites are pretty much a collection of related web pages, including the multimedia content, the text that you have, and stuff like that. So you have a website built typically off of just pure HTML, CSS, and perhaps pure vanilla JavaScript or any other programming language, as the case may be. Then talking a little bit more about the front end and the back end engineering. Let's see. So, I mean, the next slide, I'll go a little bit deeper into these terms. But when we're talking about the front end side of things, we're pretty much talking about a bit more about the part of your application that the user is interacting with. The backend will have to be talking about the data side of things, and the APIs that you're pretty much working with. These are things that we'll get into over time. Then when we talk about OP pretty much means object-oriented programming. And it's pretty much, a paradigm that uses objects and their associated data types and methods to, sort of design software applications for you. And we can talk about software without talking about security. Security is something that you need to always consider when you're, building whatever application or whatever piece of software that you have. And moving a little bit more into some of these terms, like I said, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the front end and the back end side of things here. Now, when we deep dive, let's dive a little bit deep into this. Now, we have the front end, we have the back end. Personally, that's the way I like to break it down to make it a little bit more easier to understand. I like to put it this way. So for the front end, I like to say we have two sides of the front end. We have the front of the front end, and we have the back of the front end and the back end. And I'll explain in a bit. Now, when I talk about the front of the front end, I'm pretty much talking about building the UI, building the interface, pretty much the part of the application that the user is going to interact with. When I talk about the back of the front end, those are like the main logic, the complex logic, and the middle layer for your front end. That's the part that connects your back end to the front end. That's the part where you have the complex logic that tells your application, when this is done on this part of my program, do this. That's pretty much the underground stuff that is happening on the front end. And then you pretty much have the back end side of things where you're talking about handling your data. You're talking about building your APIs. It could be REST, it could be SOAP, and stuff like that. Now, things you need to consider uh, when we're talking about the front end, the back end, we have various tech stacks in the front end, we have various tech stacks in the back end. Now, for the front end, some of the really common tech stacks you could talk about would be React. We have React, which is a library. We have the Next.js, we have Gatsby, we have Django, which pretty much works with Python, and there are a couple other ones that are available there. And then there are also some extra libraries that you probably use when you're, so you need to understand that. Yeah, so sometimes things can get a little bit cranky and really scary where you are trying to learn a certain library or framework, and you realize you cannot use it alone. For instance, you're trying to learn React, and you realize, oh, you need to manage your state. Oh, you're not talking about state management, you're talking about Redux, you're talking about Zustan, you're talking about context API. So you need to understand that some of these texts that come with some extra libraries that will help you utilize it to the full potential. And in terms of also, one other thing I'd like to sort of differentiate is because I just made mention of React being a library and Next.js being a framework for React. So we need to sort of understand there's a bit of a difference between a library and a framework. So while a library is a set of pre-written code that you can build upon, a framework would pretty much have. So frameworks, I like to think of frameworks having opinions. So frameworks are really opinionated. So frameworks sort of want you to do things certain ways, while the library would, allow you to do things a bit more freely. You get what I mean? Then in terms of the backend, uh, there are certain languages you can use to build the backend. I really love JavaScript because JavaScript pretty much has libraries for the front end and libraries for the back end. So for the back end, if you are using JavaScript, you pretty much be using Node.js for the back end, or you could use some framework like Next.js, which exists now, which is based off Node.js as well. And also you could use Java, Python, or PHP for the back end side of things. Now, I'll talk a bit about databases before I get to the DevOps and CI/CD. Now, for databases, we usually have like two main parts of the databases. We pretty much have the NoSQL and the SQL one. So when we talk about the SQL databases, they're pretty much the structured query language. These ones pretty much are the most common ones that you probably have stumbled upon if you played with stuff already, if you played with some frameworks, played with code already, you probably stumbled upon SQL. And when it comes to the NoSQL one, we have stuff like GraphQL, we have the MongoDB, and there are some other ones. I think Amazon has the DynamoDB, and we have Redis, which pretty much handles key value stores there. Now, talking about DevOps, also when we talk about DevOps, now DevOps pretty much tries to unify the software development and IT operations. So that's pretty much where the short form is coming from. Software development, the dev part, and then the IT operations at the ops part. So it pretty much tries to shorten the whole software development life cycle. Tries to the goal for DevOps is pretty much automating different tasks that you would run normally do. So we try to make things to move from the starting phase to the ending phase really quickly. So you automate as much as you can there in that case. And another thing I'd like to talk a little bit more about is the version control system. I think some of us have probably heard of Git. Now, Git is an example of a version control system. And the concept behind this is when you start writing code, you realize that. Okay, started. So when you start writing code, you realize that the history of your code is very important. You realize that you want to keep track of the changes you make. There are certain times where you want to roll back some of your changes. There are certain times where you'd like to see how something was done, perhaps a feature that you removed. You'd like to take a look back in your history. So the version control system pretty much helps you to be able to go back in code and sort of take a look at the history and understand exactly what you had before. It also helps you to be able to collaborate with other developers. When you have a version control system, it helps you to you can work on one part of your application, you have another developer working on the other part of the application. And Git is a very popular one. And when it comes to specific examples, we'll talk about GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and stuff like that. And another thing I'd like to just talk a little bit more, the IDEs and the SDKs. Now, the IDE and the SDKs are somewhat so IDE pretty much stands for the Integrated Development Environment, and the SDK pretty much stands for the Software Development Kit. So for IDEs, we have the very popular ones like VS Code, we have PyCharm, we have IntelliJ, we have Sublime Text, Eclipse, and for the SDKs, we have stuff like the Android SDK, the Apple iOS SDK, the Java SDK, and the rest. Now, personally, it's hard for me, even being in the industry for so long, to sort of know the exact, the to sort of differentiate IDEs from SDKs because people use them interchangeably. So you should have it at the back of your mind that you might hear definitions and explanations about one that is somewhat similar to the other. Okay. Now moving to the specialization. So we'll talk a little bit more here now. There are very many areas of specialization in the industry. People tend to focus on web development. People want to get into the industry and they're like, oh yeah, I heard it's easier to be a web developer. I heard it's easier to learn HTML and CSS. Who knows? It might be harder for you to learn HTML and CSS and easier for you to start with Python. It might be harder for you to learn with, to start learning JavaScript and easier for you to learn Java. So it's really dependent on what your strengths are. So you need to understand that getting into the industry, you shouldn't focus on what people around you are already doing. You should try to look a little bit more into what is out there, the various areas that are out there. Try to understand these areas to sort of, give you a better understanding on what they're about. It makes it easier for you to, decide where you want to go. So, so a little bit for context, yeah. So people that are a bit lost with the list I have, I'll talk about a little in no time. We'll understand a little bit more. You know how in the music industry we have the pop artists, we have the R&B, we have the Afro and the like, and then talking about medicine, we have the pediatrician, we have the surgeons, we have the neurologist, and the rest. So in the tech industry, we also have various aspects of specialization. And now moving into it, first I'd like to say this list does not, scrape the surface of the fields. There are a whole bunch of different roles out there that you need to research on and pretty much get a better understanding of. Now, web development, for web development, there are various roles that could pop up from there. Somewhat for web development and software development itself, some of the roles sort of are interchangeable. So that's where you would see people being front end engineers, back end engineers, and different organizations have different names for them. They could call them engineers, they could call them developers. Some of them would be full stack engineers, full stack developers. It really is dependent on what the organization is calling it. But at the end of it, all the responsibilities and the expectations would always be somewhat the same. And then the technologies you're expected to know sometimes are similar, sometimes are different, dependent on the problem which the organization is trying to solve. And now, when we talk about product management, it's somewhat similar to the typical role out there, called I think project management. But in this case, you're pretty much managing the product itself. So it's somewhat similar to project management, but it's you focusing on the particular product. So you could have an organization with, say, 4 or 5 products out there in the market, and they would have, I mean, 4 or 5 or even 6, 7, 8 product managers, managing the products that they have there. And in terms of security, some of the rules. Okay, so for product management, you could have a product manager, you could have a technical owner, you could have a technical product owner. So there are various roles that could come up from there. For security itself, you could have a software security engineer, you could have an IT analyst, you could have, now there are very, very many names you could call people in that role, in those roles or in that part of the industry. So if you're interested in security, you'd have to, go a little bit deeper to know the roles that are available there. So it sort of helps you to know where to start from, what you need to move forward. And in terms of mobile application development, sometimes you find people that are, either web developers or software engineers also being mobile app developers, but that's not always the case. So mobile app developers would pretty much you probably have an iOS engineer or an Android engineer. You hear things like that, or you'd have someone that works on a cross-platform application. So pretty much making use of React Native, for instance, to build an application that will run on the Android and the iOS devices. Then we have the data science. I think data science is a really broad part as well. In that part, you'll probably be having data scientists, data engineers, machine learning engineers. You have the AI engineers as well, and all of these people would focus on data. Really, I mean, a while back we used to play with the terminology big data a lot, but that's been broken down now into easier bits for people to understand. So those are these other roles that I just mentioned, and artificial intelligence, like I just said. And then in terms of cloud computing, now we know that most organizations are pretty much focusing on moving their data, moving their servers to the cloud because it will always be easier for you to have all of that on the cloud than have hardware to maintain it. I mean, there are disadvantages of having stuff on the cloud, but I would always say it's even nicer for you to have stuff on the cloud than to have it on premise. In terms of the cloud computing side of things, we have I think there are really three main organizations that provide cloud resources. So talking about the Amazon Web Services, the Microsoft Azure, and the Google Cloud Platform. So for the cloud computing side, you could have a cloud engineer. There are very many roles that come with it, and recently we have organizations wanting even software engineers or web developers to have a level of understanding or expertise in cloud computing. Being able to make use of the resources there so that you can get the job done is something they're trying to do now. And another one would be the DevOps part. So I pretty much spoke about what DevOps is. And the SRE here stands for the Site Reliability Engineer. So those are pretty much the people that would you know, uh, handle all of the DevOps part of things for you. And yeah, I think this is another thing that is a bit out there where people are not able to fully differentiate them. So it's people are not really able to fully differentiate who DevOps engineers really are and who site reliability engineers really are. So that's something you could on your own get back and really look into it. Then we also have the quality assurance engineers and the testing engineers, the test engineers. So those are pretty much the people that would, um, the engineers, the software engineers would build the application. So the quality assurance engineers and the test engineers are the ones that would test the application and make sure that they are working as expected and make sure they're as bug free as possible and ready to be shipped for production. And then we also have the tech adjacent roles. Like I said, we have there are lots of adjacent roles. So for people coming from various industries, coming from marketing, coming from sales, coming from you know other aspects of different organizations trying to get into the tech side of things, there are very many adjacent roles that you could look at that would really they'll pretty much be your strong points because I mean think about it like I said earlier, if you're coming from sales, you already have the understanding of sales. So coming from that industry and becoming a sales engineer, you're pretty much turning into a beast when it comes to that side of things. If you're coming from marketing, you're pretty much coming with that knowledge. So you should know that there are lots of transferable skills that you would come with into the industry coming from a non-traditional tech background. Okay, and that is pretty much what I have for everyone. So, having a bit of a recap here before you jump into anything, before you take anybody's advice, and I'd like to put it out there that this might work for some people and might not work for some people. But before you take anyone's advice, you first on your own need to think about why you want to get into the industry. The why helps you to know where you should be headed. So the why would help you to be like, okay, this is why I pretty much want to build some sales stuff. So you'd be like, oh, I'm going to move into the sales engineering role. You need to think about it properly. And once you've done the thinking, the next thing you should be doing would be, to do the research on the terms in the industry, trying to understand some of the terms that people use. It makes it easier for you to have conversations with people already in the industry. It makes it easier for you to reach out to people that are already experts to, show you where to go, show you the direction, recommend courses or tools that will work for you. And, you have to go a little bit deeper into some of these terms again and the tools that are being used for the part you would like to work on. And then, you need to take a look at the different roles that exist in terms of the area you want to focus on. So understanding the roles that exist make it easier. I mean, knowing what the end looks like helps you to work towards that. So think about it this way. You're trying to become a software engineer. You know very well that when you are done learning, you probably start from an internship role or a junior engineering role or a mid engineering role, depending on how good you are throughout your learning process, you start looking at job openings that have these roles and start looking at the expectations of people for this particular role. So look at the tech stacks there, look at the technologies that are being expected to learn, look at the ones that are common for various organizations, and start from there, learn those ones that seem to be commonly used everywhere first, and then you move on to focus on the ones that you think would work best for you. And finally, you pretty much get to decide uh, where, I mean, at this point, you have already decided, the path you want to follow and how you want to go about it. And yeah, so in all of this, I just want everybody to know that at the end, the best way to break into tech really is to, stay up to date with the emerging technologies, learn new skills, and be open to taking risks. Because the truth is, every single day, every other day, different technologies are coming out. You have to just find a way to keep up with it. You have to just find a way to, learn the new technologies that are coming out in your own area of specialization. That way, you stay relevant in the industry, you stay relevant in your field, and you're growing as an individual as well. And yeah, so that is what I have for everyone. I do not know if we have questions. I'll stop sharing now. And yeah, let me check the chat. Let's see. Okay, so I don't think there are any questions in the chat. I don't know if we have anyone that has a question that would just want to. You could just unmute yourself and ask. If not, let's see. Let's give a minute here and see. Are there any questions from anyone?
I was interested in Scrum or Agile. Um, can you hear me? I'm
Sorry,
sorry
what's
about.
the
Uh, I was interested in Scrum, going through the Scrum course.
Sorry, I think I missed that.
Okay, Scrum. Let me type it in chat. Uh, let's see.
All right, so while you're typing it out, I think we have some questions here. Yeah, okay, so the first question is what my first job was in tech. So I think it started out while I was in school. So I pretty much interned at I think an organization called Uptech. Uh, so that was me. I interned as a web designer then, and honestly, I never liked anything that had to do with the web. Surprising that I do a lot of web development. So yeah, my first role was as an intern while I was in university. But outside university, my first role was actually in lecturing before I got back into a full technical role. Okay. Um, let's see. How this question is, hope the recording will be made available to everyone. Yes, I will be able to record it will be made available to everyone. Okay. So Larry's question is, what things web development start from? Yeah. So if you want to go into web development, that pretty much happens to be my own side of things. You pretty much start from the beginning. Yeah, like I gave different steps from where you should start from. Now you want web development, so you start looking at the technologies that you know related to that and not related to that because we want to be able to communicate with other aspects of the industry as well, right? So you should, start from understanding the terminologies available first, and then once you've done that, there are different courses, there are different programs available there. So you could choose to take a free. I think Free Code Bootcamp has a full lineup of codes. Full lineup of steps for you to go through web development for that, or you could find a bootcamp that will work best for you. Okay, So Roman's question is it necessary to have a degree in software engineering or related to work on the tech industry? So no, not necessarily. These days we have companies hiring engineers without an engineering degree. I think Google hires engineers without a degree, and a couple other big tech companies do that as well. So these days you don't need that engineering degree for some organizations for you to be able to get a role there. So that shouldn't stop you from, getting into whatever aspect you want to focus on. Okay, let's see. Um, yeah, okay. Kingsley, let's have a question.
Yeah, good day.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
All right. I'm actually getting into the tech industry because I'm a student of a polytechnic over here in Nigeria, and I'm offering computer engineering. But the issue I'm having is based on our curriculum. Yeah, it doesn't prepare you for the future of tech. So my question is, one, how get myself involved to prepare myself for the future? Because just like, let me say, for instance, during the early 90s and early 20s, yeah, like the job as a clerk is usually invoke them. But now those job positions are not available. So as someone that is coming up and has a lot of a future, a lot of jobs in future. So what actually are the areas I need to focus on? How do I keep myself invoke with the trendings like the actually the robotics, the AI and other innovation coming out by 2050, 2070? So how do I stay and what are the path I should take in going through the process?
Yeah, okay. So one of the first things you should have at the back of your mind is your school might not really prepare you for where you're headed. What most schools do would be to try to touch the surface of things. So you on your own would have to, go out there, do your research, figure out the industry you're interested in, and look for courses, look for programs that are focused on that, look for people that are already in that industry. It's usually easier for you to first look for people that are already in that industry and get them to recommend the best pathway for you, because uh, you know 3 out of 5 times these people have already tried out a lot of things, and they've gotten to realize that some things are going to work better for some people and some things will not work. So it's better for you to reach out to these people to sort of direct you on where to go, what best to do. It's easier that way rather than going out there, and because there are lots of things on the internet, you'd find lots of courses, and some of these courses might not really teach you the right way, and you might end up uh, being you might end up finding yourself in a rabbit hole, truth be told, because you just keep going deeper and deeper and not really knowing exactly what you're doing, and you're just learning everything. I mean, I know people that would, say they want to get into web development and to learn web design, so they learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript. The next thing they're learning React, and okay, the next thing they're learning React Native. They say they want to also learn mobile development, and then the next thing they're like, oh, that's Flutterwave. They like to learn Flutter, not Flutterwave, sorry. They like to learn Flutter. And the next thing they're like, oh, for the backend, I'd like to learn Node. Okay, let me try Java. And they find themselves just learning everything and not really focusing. So you're going to try to, on your own, like know exactly what you're looking for, and talk to people that are already there, so that it's easier for you to know how to focus and move forward. Yeah, okay. So I see that Gregory's question was actually in the chat. Sorry, I think I missed that. I was looking out for it in the question side. So Gregory, you're so interested in Scrum, and starting a course in Scrum. Yeah, so I know that there are lots of Scrum Masters out there. So you pretty much have to find, one or two of them to talk to. And yeah, I would also recommend when you're talking to experts, try not to talk to just one, because the truth is, most people are really opinionated. So it's best for you to talk to, 2 or 3 people to get the general points from everyone, and get also know that some of these people might not fully know what they're talking about sometimes. So just get the general knowledge from these people, and use that as a base for you to build upon what you're trying to get to. Okay, let's see. I think we have a question. Okay, so Bankole has a question. Go for it.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I
Good
can hear
evening,
you.
sir.
Go for it. Yeah, good evening.
I presently am a student, and I'm working on machine learning and artificial intelligence to run some programs. But we had a general factor affecting us in Africa, Nigeria when it comes to coding
Okay.
generally.
Okay.
Even most of our instructors are not ICT or code minded like that, even though they are PhD holders, professors.
Yeah.
But my research topic, I've opened my eyes to data learning, deep learning, data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. I've tried to learn, read books on my own. I'm learning every day through Python programming. But I don't know how Codementor will facilitate me, help me through in my career pursuit so that I can become a good code minded person and a programmer. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so I think your question is somewhat related to the question that Kingsley had for us. You would find yourself in an institution, and most of the people that are teaching you have probably never worked in the industry. So they are most of the time going to be talking to you based off the theory that
Yes.
they're using. Yeah, so they probably have not worked in the industry. They probably have all these degrees, but they've really not worked in the industry. So it's hard for you to learn industry stuff from these guys. So at this point, you're just going to have to look out for people that are experts in that industry. Pretty much the same thing. Look for experts in that industry and converse with them to sort of get you to know the best way to follow, sort of get you to know. And in terms of learning and growing on your own, I think people learn differently. So people can learn by reading books. So there are people that would prefer to, get books that teach people how to code. There are people that would prefer to, learn from a course. There are people that would prefer to just look at the documentation of whatever language they're trying to learn and learn from there. And there are people that probably prefer to learn from, you know, videos. So talking about YouTube videos or, taking the courses, like I said again. And then there are also people that the best way for them to learn is in person as well. So I wouldn't know what works best for you, but you should also know that you might be trying what's not working for you. So you probably might need to try something else. So if you've been reading books and it seems as though reading books does not work for you, then you probably need to try something else. Look for courses on YouTube. Look for some people that are experts in that industry on YouTube. Look at introductory courses that they have out there and see if it works for you. Okay, so talking about, so Rhoda has a question, recommend some boot camps, and Kingsley's question is pretty much the same. So I actually did share some boot camps in the slide, but oh, I'm not sure if it is actually in that slide, but I'll take a look and add it up if it's not there. But there are some boot camps. I think 4 is one, General Assembly is another, Bloom Tech is another as well. I think the one that is quite popular in Africa right now is Old School as well, which most people are taking right now. So there is that. There are a lot actually. If you just Googled, boot camps, just if you Google, top 10 boot camps right now, you probably see some of these boot camps there. In terms of free boot camps, it's hard to find the free ones really, but I think Free Code Camp, as the name implies, sort of has everything for free there. So if you checked Free Code Camp, you'd have various courses for some aspects of the industry available there for you. Okay, let's see. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so no questions going once, questions going twice. All right, so I think that's it. So we can wrap up here. Thank you guys so much for coming in here to get a little bit of knowledge from me. It was actually really fun talking about these things. Having spoken to lots of people, I realized that it's best to. I realized that I pretty much have the same conversation with everyone that tries to break in. So it made a lot of sense to come up here and have this conversation with more people and sort of have a video to help others that probably have these questions but do not have access to someone to talk to them about. All right. So thank you guys. Bye bye.